Yeah, I think it's just good people around you. Like I come in at a young age, like I signed my contract at 17, I think, or 18. And I was replacing who's now my boss, but was the greatest of all time, Jamie Whincup. So he's like won the most championships, like the most was the GOAT, in Supercars. And I was the guy replacing him as some rookie. And no one had seen that in the team that I'm in at Red Bull. So for me to come in, obviously there was lots of big shoes to fill, but having good people around me, I always feel like I expect a lot from myself, and it probably normally outweighs what people expect from me. So, but in my first year, they're like, go out, learn, do your thing. Like you just go do you, and we'll figure out at the end of the year where you sort of end up. And that was good for me. Like I had a good year. Like I finished 6th in the championship. I was pretty stoked with that as a rookie. I've got such a good team. Like I'm just, as I say, like I'm still young. I'm still growing up. I want to be around people that are going to help me be a better person. I think the team that I'm at is certainly going to do that.
Welcome back to the Keegan and Company podcast. For those who are new to the show, my name is Keegan Hipgrave. And guys, just a quick one from me. If you haven't already, could I get you to jump over, give us a little like and subscribe, or whatever platform you listen to this podcast on, whether it's Apple, YouTube, Spotify. It's a great way for us to grow the podcast, grow the platform, and just have incredible conversations like I'm going to have today. In this episode, I'm joined by professional V8 Supercar driver, Broc Feeney. How are you, brother?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me.
Mate, thanks for coming in. Mate, how good? Goldie, beautiful weather. We're doing it tough here. How's the morning been?
It's good. We're middle of winter. I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. Just been down to the beach to get a drink. Life's pretty good.
Mate, that's what I was thinking. We went and got a coffee this morning, and I was just thinking, like, man, first of all, like, how grateful, but also, like, small world. Like, Chloe, who's producing a lot of our content here, she's just like, oh, I've got a friend who's racing supercars. Like, do you reckon you'd be keen to have a chat? I was like, 100%. I was like, and, mate, thanks for coming on, because don't know too much about, like, the supercar space, and keen to learn more about your story. So, mate, beautiful. Keen to have you on.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool how it all lines up. It's sort of meant to be. So 20 minutes down the road, it's pretty easy to come down here and a little studio ready to go.
Mate, we're frothing. Mate, but I think before we kick off, like, I think it's probably a great start just to see, like, where you grew up. Like, you obviously grew up here on the Goldie. Like, what was the Feeney household like growing up? Like, were you sporty? Like, was it always like race? Like, was it racing always a thing? What was growing up like?
Yeah, so I was born on the coast. I'm only 21 now, so born in 2002. But my dad was a professional motorbike racer on road back in the day.
Yeah.
So he grew up doing that, and then he actually met mum at a racetrack.
It's a perfect love story,
no, it's just meant to be.
Yeah.
And then he went into importing and distributing motorbikes. So I actually grew up racing dirt bikes I was known as the dirt bike kid, through my dad and everything like that. So I raced pretty much from when I was 3 till I was about 9 on a dirt bike, and won a couple of like Aussie titles and that on flat track and stuff like that. And it's so weird for me to speak about it because I was so set on, I want to be a motorbike rider and I want to follow my dad's footsteps and everything. And then we went on a holiday to Thailand and we went high karting and just fell in love and we sort of switched. But yeah, for me, like motor racing's everything. Like I always play a bit of sport, play a bit of footy and that, not that good. But fortunately for me, I could ride a bike or drive a car decent. So I'd certainly say it's in the blood.
So you said you tried a bunch of different sports growing up. What else did you play?
Yeah, so I just played soccer, played a bit of rugby, played a bit of union at school and all that sort of stuff. But I always enjoyed it, but I was never like into it. Like I actually want to pursue this where I always wanted to be in motorsport. I always wanted to be a motorbike rider when I was a kid. Like I was bringing my motorbike to school for show and tell. Like we were traveling the country when I was like 5-6 years old, racing dirt track and always racing at a high level. So I feel like for me, like obviously a lot of people think I'm quite new into the sport, which I am, but I've been doing it for 15, probably more years at like a national level. So you're traveling around a lot, a big effort from the family, but that was such the cool thing. Like we're so motorsport orientated, especially myself, my dad and mum as well. So to still be on this journey, still have them coming along with me sort of makes it pretty special.
What kind of role are your parents playing now? Like, or even like when you first started coming into the role? Because I will relate a lot of this conversation to like footy parents and like my mum was like packing my lunchbox before going to a game. Like what role did they play like practically?
Yeah, so it's always a hard one. Like dad was always involved. He was driving the truck, and to be honest, once he actually sold his motorbike business, he got into the go-kart business and was selling. So he was always involved in that side, but he tried to let someone else do it for me, like have a mechanic to do something for me, because you see a lot where the parents and the son, or whichever way it goes, end up clashing a little bit. You know,
Really?
you
Yeah.
sort of struggle to take a little bit of advice. Me and dad never really had that, but he always let me go off with someone else. But he's my wingman. I feel like if
Yeah.
you know me, you know my dad. Like he's one of those guys where we're super similar, and he's been everything for me. Like certainly wouldn't be where I am, and he still looks after me, manages all my contracts, comes to pretty much every race weekend, and yeah, they're just the people that I can lean on, you know, in good or bad situations.
Probably good to soundboard like some good ideas from, right? Like even though like you're racing at the highest level in Australia at the moment, like I imagine having someone in your corner who's had that history and that past before, huge to soundboard ideas from, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's just been through it. Like he obviously raced at a real high level here in Australia, but he gets it. And I feel like he rides a wave even more than me sometimes. You know, sometimes I gotta be like, Dad, calm down, it's all good. Like
Yeah, man.
I'll be fine. Like, but when I'm down, he's the one there that can pick me up, and that I'm still living at home. Like I'm still in that family environment. So it's just cool to have those, you know, mum and dad to lean on, and that they're always there for me. But yeah, to think what they like, I could never repay them back for what they did to take me through this sport. And we sort of briefly spoke about it before this, but like it's such a big financial effort as well to get to this stage. So yeah, I'm pretty lucky to be in the position I'm in.
When you were growing up, was your dad still racing professional? Like, did you get to see him when you were a
No.
kid? He finished up beforehand?
Yeah, he finished up quite a bit before, but like he had race teams and that. So he was importing Husqvarna motorcycles, so they're a dirt bike brand, and he had race teams that run all around Australia. So I was always growing up going away to these race meetings, and he'd try and get people over from Europe and that were like world champions in their sport. And I'm just this little like 4 or 5 year old kid hanging out with these world champions going, this is so cool. Like I'm riding dirt bikes with these guys, hanging out with my dad and all that. So I feel like for me, that's really sort of what stemmed a lot of this, just hanging around people that are really good at what they do, and it's from such a young age.
Well, it's like you've obviously had such a positive experience and like
Yep.
made so many sick memories. Yeah. Like I look at a lot of guys who play footy, like especially if their dads have been in that space. Like
Yep.
one of my really good friends, Jed Cartwright, he plays at South. He actually just went overseas. His dad was John Cartwright, who was the first coach of the Gold Coast Titans. So me and him, we would stay at his place and then go to the game, Titans game. We'd be in the sheds, like be in the little ball boys on the side of the game. And then we'd wake up, we'd go home that night after the game. We would rewatch the game, and then we'd get up early the next morning and watch the game again.
Yeah.
And it was cool, like, because you're in the sheds, you're knocking around with crew, and you're like, these are the guys, like, this is something that I want to do. And so it was cool that you had like these positive experience with, I imagine, probably like half role models, yeah?
Oh, 100%, like just growing up. But it's a weird one. They're just normal people. And that's what I suppose you forget. And you forget when you get into the space, but you're just hanging out with these guys like they're normal guys. And you know, when I was young, we're just mucking around and playing Nerf gun battles when they're at my house, and, you know, just all this fun stuff. But it's just awesome to have people like that are around you and sort of in your circle. And so I've been fortunate to grow up in an environment like that. And as I say, it's just day one, we're going racing, you know, like it's just been my thing pretty much every weekend for my life. I feel like I'm at the racetrack. I'm doing something in the shed, working on my kart or go-kart or something like that. So yeah, no, it's a great spot.
Mate, going back to your parents, I remember I had a conversation with one of the guys who was doing like a lot of the junior development for Red Bull surfing, fitting. Obviously, Red Bull is a sponsor of yours and your team, so it's a fitting story. One of the guys, Chris, all-time legend, they were bringing in the best surfers from around the world that sit between, I think, like 13 to 15 or 13 to 16 or something. They've got a house here in Cooley, but the thing was, everyone who came in, they had to bring a parent. A parent had to come. There's probably like 10 or 15 of them. Had this big, like, beautiful Airbnb, doing it tough. And but the weekend included like a lot of, like, obviously talks, a lot of surfing, like competing heats. But one of the best things that Chris brought in, the guy who was facilitating the workshop, was they brought Mick Fanning and his mum in to like one of the first conversations that they had. And the conversation, it was kind of like a Q&A setup. And the biggest thing that they were talking about, what Mick's mum was talking around, was around like how to support like your kids coming through. Because obviously like us kids going, like, you want to do everything. You probably want to surf every heat. I imagine you growing up, you probably wanted to race like every race you could, or like probably race a bunch of different races. But what Mick's mum was saying, like, instead of being like a controlling like helicopter parent where like you're telling them how to race, you're telling them that they have to do every single event. It's just like, no, like be there to support
Let them
them.
do
Like,
what they want.
let them do what they want. And I love what you said before around, your dad was always there, but you always had people that were like in the industry to like support you because they know what they're doing. Like that's what Mick's mum said. Mick's mum was just like, he's got the best, surf coaches. Like he's doing, it's not my role to tell him how to surf. Like he knows how to surf. My role is to like make sure he's getting good sleep and make sure he's hanging around good crew and make sure he's like fed well and probably like not overcooking it because you can do 1,000 heats. You just go out and have fun. And it was funny, like after that conversation and Q&A, the parents were like, that Q&A kind of seemed like it was directed at us. And they're like, yeah, it probably was. But it's cool that your parents like sort of had that idea where, you like want to talk to other coaches.
Yeah, for sure. And you see that so much in sport these days, I think in general, but obviously I see it a lot in motorsport in young kids starting go-karts. Parents they're sort of living out their dream through their kid, and you see that a lot. And that's what I always say to young kids. I'm like, or the parents, I'm like, you give them the choice. If they want to do it, you go and do it. But I try not to push them too much into it. And that was one thing I felt like I always really wanted to do this, but at the same level, so did my family. Yeah. So I never felt like one outweighed the other. Maybe I'd like to say me a little bit more outweighed the other, but it's just trying to not live out through someone else. So I think that's the cool thing. You need to be careful. It's a touchy relationship. You can't have your parents getting and firing in at other people and stuff like that and trying to speak for yourself. And obviously now I'm at the age where I can speak for myself and that. So my parents got a great relationship with my team. They're always in the garage. And my dad actually frequently talks to the guys in the team and just sees what's going on and if I need to do anything better, and sits down with my boss at the end of the year, talks contracts, but also talks what I need to do better. And it's someone so easy. If they say Broc needs to work on this area, Dad knows how to approach that and talk to me about it. So it's great having someone that I can lean on like that, and I don't have to worry about some stuff, and it's just makes everything super easy.
Man, it seems like you've got such a good supportive environment. I'd love to talk around like the progression, or I guess like the route from growing like from a kid to the professional, like where you are now. Like, what does it look like? Because you said you did like, is go-karting? Go-karting is like is initial stage when you first, like what's the progression?
Yeah, so I raced karts from when I was 9 to 15, and like I suppose everyone thinks like go on the high kart track, like this is like proper serious stuff. Like people are rocking up in semi-trailers and that now, like it's getting that serious. But I did that for quite a few years. I won a national championship here in 2017, and then I was always doing a little bit overseas, but especially that year I did a bit in Europe. So I finished 5th in Italy, which was called the Rock World Cup over there. And then 2nd in this like Las Vegas Super Nats, they call it, which is like a real big event over there. So it's quite cool. A lot of the kids that I raced are like in Formula 1 or Formula 2 and that these days, and other, motorsport categories around the world, which is awesome. But then from there, you go to, okay, what am I going to do? Like I always wanted to race cars. And to be honest, I would have liked to try and go to Europe and pursue that F1 dream, but had to be a bit realistic. It's quite a expensive exercise to do that. But we sort of set our mind out here, and someone who's been a great mentor of mine, Paul Morris, he won the Bathurst 1000 in 2014. We've known him since I was a young fella, and he owns a track and a team out here. So he really took me under my wing, and I did about 3 or 4 years in junior categories before I went full-time in supercars. So you start in a little Toyota 86, you race around sort of a part of the supercars calendar, and then I went into what is Super 3 and Super 2, which is just the categories below. So we just run an older car. So say in 2024, Super 2 runs a car from 2020 and Super 3 runs a car from 2017.
Gotcha.
Roughly. So I sort of went through those ranks. I won Super 3, I won Super 2, and then got the big gig of stepping up to the full-time seat of supercars.
Do you ever get or do you see it in other races or drivers where like you're sort of pushing it a little bit further, where it's like you think you want to get there or you want to get somewhere quicker instead of actually like doing the reps and like kind of earning your stripes a little bit? Like, do you see that at all?
You see it a lot. And I think as well, because the sport is so expensive, and for some people you have one shot, but you nearly need to forget about that part, which is so hard, but you do just need to focus on what you need to do to be better. And sometimes that's taken a step back and really doing that. And that's something that's sort of happening for me this year. I'm trying to fight for a championship, and sometimes I think I nearly want it too much, you know, and you gotta take that step back and enjoy it, and just really look at it from an outside perspective.
Mate, that's such a cool thought process to have, like, while you're so young. Like, you're 21, mate. I thought you were coming here. I thought you were 25. You just got you just got an older presence about you, I feel, which is great. Like, mate, when I came into the NRL, or before I came into the NRL, I was like 18, signed first pro contract at 17. So it was like teenager, I wanted to make my NRL debut, but like was so fucking head up my ass, like thought I was like better than what I was, and just wanted to play so badly, had a bunch of injuries which end up delaying me further. Wish I had the time back where I'd be like, no, like pull it back a little bit, like you're here to learn, like you've got so many great like mentors and like resources around you, like just settle in and enjoy the journey. Like, and to be honest, it's good. Like, you look back on it now, but I see a lot of young kids now coming through. I'll say, brother, I've been there. Like, just enjoy the process and enjoy the journey. But it's cool that you've actually got that. You've got that mind frame now.
Yeah, I think it's just good people around you. Like, I come in at a young age. Like, I signed my contract at 17, I think, or 18. And I was replacing, who's now my boss, but was the greatest of all time, Jamie Whincup. So he's like the most... won the most championships, like the most was the GOAT, you know, in Supercars. And I was the guy replacing him as some rookie. And no one had seen that in the team that I'm in at Red Bull. So for me to come in, obviously there was lots of big shoes to fill, but having good people around me, I always feel like I expect a lot from myself, and it probably normally outweighs what people expect from me. So, but in my first year, they're like, go out, learn, do your thing. Like you just go do you, and we'll figure out at the end of the year where you sort of end up. And that was good for me. Like, I had a good year. Like, I finished sixth in the championship. I was pretty stoked with that as a rookie. My teammate won. He was doing an awesome job. And just to lean on people like that, like, I think I didn't come into an environment where we're always just like, oh, we wish you got like one result better. It was just like, it's gonna be an up and down year. You got to take the rides. Like, I got a podium on my third race, and I'm like, holy crap! Like, I'm on. Like, this is gonna be awesome. But then you go the next round, you have a bad one. You're like, okay. But then obviously that mindset changes. You go into when you're fighting for race wins all the time, and now fighting for a championship, and obviously things do change. But it's good people around you. I've got such a good team. Like, I'm just, as I say, like, I'm still young. I'm still growing up. I want to be around people that are going to help me be a better person. And I think the team that I'm at is certainly going to do that.
Going into when you replaced your now boss, are you nervous? Is that a nerve-wracking thing? Because obviously, like, you're so young. You were 17, 18 years old when you took over that spot. You nervous?
No, I was ready. Like, this is all I dreamed of. Like, I actually couldn't believe that it happened. So I suppose I always, you know, in my head, I'm like, I'm going to make it. Like, I'm going to get there. But I probably didn't expect to go straight to the best team in pit lane, and nor did anyone. It was a bit of a surprise, but when it happened, it was like, I'm ready for this. Like, this is what I work for. This is everything that I do, is to get to this position, and to be in a position where I know I can win races and championships is all I've wanted. And so no, I wouldn't say I was nervous. As I say, I expect a lot of myself, and I knew I was going to work as hard as I could to get some good results.
What do you think separates the crew who go on and make it versus the guys that don't? Like, I imagine there's probably a lot of kids who race karts, and you said it's a very expensive sport.
Yep.
What do you think separates the crew that go on to make it?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like, there's a lot of guys that are really good that probably never had the chance to go forward because of financial support and things like that. But man, like, I absolutely live for this. And I'm sure you're the same. Like, I think everyone at the top of their game would do anything to make it happen. And but sometimes that is taking a step back and looking at it from the outside. But I'll work my ass off I feel like I did work my ass off to get to where I am, and putting yourself around good people and making smart decisions. Like, I feel like a lot, you sort of might think at the time it's a good decision, but we really sat down and we literally drew it on a whiteboard. Okay, we want to get to here. That's Supercars. Okay, how long have we got to get there? Okay, we got 4 years. Okay, how are we going to do it? And we just planned it out. And to be honest, fortunately, we went well enough that we could tick each box. So we went, okay, we're going to do Toyotas for a year. Hopefully we can move to Super 3 next. Did Toyotas, moved to Super 3, won Super 3, got in with a good team, did a year and a half during COVID in Super 2 and won that and got the deal. Like it all worked out pretty well. But yeah, it's good people. It's putting the work in and just really digging deep for it.
How old were you when you did the whiteboard exercise?
Well, 15. I was 15.
Is that with your team? Is that with your dad? Like
It was with my dad and Paul Morris, who I mentioned before. So he owns a track up at on the Gold Coast at Norwell. So we sat out there with him and it was on his whiteboard. He went, okay, this is what we're going to do. He goes, we're going to get here. And he goes, and this is how we're going to do it. So we sat down as the three of us and just went, okay, let's see what we can do. And under his guidance, we went all the way through and he has great contacts. And that's how I sort of met my bosses now. And it's quite a cool story. We used to race little Hyundai XLs, real old cars, real small things, even when I was racing. And we were racing in Sydney during COVID, and the founder of my team was great mates with Paul, so he come down with us. We raced the weekend. I won the weekend, and we were driving home from Sydney, and we were just in a little minivan. So I drove the whole way. I drove from Sydney. We spent the night in Port Macquarie, and then I drove the next day. He tells the story. That's what got me the job. I was just a 17-year-old kid that drove the whole way from Sydney home, didn't complain, and that's what sparked that thing to think, okay, let's have a look at this kid.
That's such the whiteboard exercise. It's a great exercise. Like, and it is actually really cool to say, this is the goal. Like this is a big goal. Apply that to any sport, any occupation, but then actually working backwards from there and figuring out like what are the actual steps, like what do I need to tick off, and like now you can just like you're going through, you're ticking them off, probably building a little bit of confidence every time you did get to tick it off, and like practically actually ticking it off or highlighting the line. Like, man, I was very similar coming through. Is that something that you're still doing now? Like what are your goals now? What's the dream? You know?
Yeah, it's to win a Supercars championship for sure. Like, as you said, I think working backwards is a good step. Like you think of sort of visualize what you want to do. Like for me, it's visualizing myself standing on the roof at the end of the year with a trophy. You know, that's the thing that you're always thinking of, you're dreaming of at night, what you want to do. But you got to work back and think how are you going to achieve that? And for me, like when I go away to a race weekend, like I got this like template document that I go through, and it's pretty much a big checklist. For me, it's okay, I'm going here. What steps do I need to be prepared for this weekend? And it's just going through and checking all those boxes pretty much. So I feel like I do a lot of prep for weekends like that, and it just makes me more prepared and more feel like I'm nearly deserving of it more, you know, when you put the effort in. I think that's one thing for me, like the training and all the work that you do just makes it more important for you when you do win or something like that.
You talked about like putting in the work.
Yep.
Like, what does that look like practically? Because we're having a coffee beforehand. You're like, yeah, we only spend like a couple times in the cars like every year.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, I would imagine that you're in there every weekend, but it's obviously a cost thing. Like, what does hard work look like in training?
Yeah. So like for people that don't know, so we race 12 times a year, but we get 3 practice days a year.
That's so wild.
Apart from that, we don't get to drive. So on a race weekend, we have normally 1 or 2 practices on a Friday. We qualify race Saturday, we qualify race Sunday. And then, we get 3 a year. So we do 1 before the start of the season, 1 middle of the year, which I've got next week, which I'm so excited for. And then 1 sort of 3/4 of the way through the year. But everyone's different in how they go about it, training throughout the week. But I got a PT, so I do gym 3 times a week. And then I normally run on my opposite days, and that we don't need to be super big, strong, anything crazy. Like we got to be strong through our legs and that, because when you brake, it's say 80 kilos roughly. And we do that, let's say 10 times throughout a lap for 80 laps. Yeah. And then your gear shift is like 23 kilos. Every time you pull it, we probably do that 60 times a lap. So that there's a little bit in that, but then the heat's the hard thing. So it's normally about 25 degrees above ambient. So when we race the Gold Coast, it's like 50, 55 degrees inside the car, and then we got all our layers on. So doing that for the endurance is sort of what you train for. You just need to be able to keep thinking smart. Like obviously there's big consequences if you get it wrong at 250 kilometers per hour. So I just do the fitness to keep myself sharp. And the same thing as I mentioned before, like when I train my ass off for 3 weeks before a race, man, I rock up and I feel like I deserve to win, you know?
But you talked about big incidences, like you're obviously doing like very fast Ks. Have you had any big accidents or near misses?
Yeah, I've had a couple, like,
Touch wood.
yeah, I've had a couple, but nothing too crazy. I had some in Super 2 when I was coming up. I had one at Bathurst, which was pretty decent. And
What did that look like?
So it was coming down the hill at Bathurst, so you probably brake at 240 or something like that, and it's pretty much like, if people know Bathurst, it's just concrete walls on the outside. And I just lost it coming over the hill and come down and hit the fence, and I was fine. Like I actually got out and felt better. Like I feel like it jolted me into it. It was a chiropractor sort of session.
Yeah.
But yeah, that banged up the car quite bad. But then I had one here at the Gold Coast when I was first starting. I sort of hit my hand and had like sort of post concussion a couple of days later. But it's nothing too crazy. Like obviously everyone's like, oh my God, how fast are you going? How many crashes do you have? You know, that's the common question. But our cars are so safe. Like I feel safer racing my car than I do driving on the road.
Really?
So I'd be happier doing 300 kilometers in my car than probably 80 down the freeway.
Yeah. Because that's probably the most obvious question is like, when you do have a crash, is that something that it could be you, but like, is that something that you get scared about, or is it something that you think about, or have you seen other guys have big crashes where it's like they take a second guess?
Yeah, I think our cars are super safe these days. Like you certainly see big crashes and it still scares you. Like you're like, oh, I don't want to get in that situation. But we haven't been in the situation for a long time where someone's been seriously injured or anything like that. There was a rollover only a couple of months ago, and the guy got out and fine, and he's still racing. You know, so I'm sure. I know my nan, who watches me a lot, freaks out a lot. She freaks out enough just watching me drive around. So for her sake, I certainly hope I don't have any crashes. But I don't think about it. Like I used to race dirt bikes. So for me, like I used to think about it on that. I'm like, man, you're watching kids getting hurt all the time. Yeah. So for me now, car racing is nothing, like no risk.
Did you have any accidents on when you were racing motocross?
Yeah, never broke a bone, but nothing too great, like just the usual go down, bit through my tongue a few times.
Yeah.
Nearly chopped my finger off on a motorbike back in the day. Just the usual stuff as a young kid.
Do you reckon, and it might not, but do you think like you or some crew get addicted to like the adrenaline? Because I imagine there's probably a huge adrenaline rush when you're going like 250 Ks an hour, yeah?
Oh, 100%. Like I think that's sort of nearly something's in our blood. Like we live off that stuff. Like everything else is pretty slow pace these days. But that's all you live for. You know, you go through a weekend and you're just so amped up the whole weekend.
Yeah.
You get back and you nearly have the crash.
Really?
You know, you have a weekend of you just flat out. We normally get there on a Wednesday. We're doing 2 days of media appearances, and you get through that, then you get into the fun stuff. You get to race cars for 3 days, and then you get back and you just like, for the Monday, Tuesday, I just don't want to do anything. I just want to chill at home, do my thing. I'll jump on my racing simulator a little bit and muck around. But you certainly get the big pump over the weekend.
Mate, that's an interesting one because even talking to guys and girls who like play big games, like sporting games, like even if it's like a really big one, like winning a grand final, say, and they obviously do the whole Mad Mondays and everything after that, but the come down afterwards, it's almost like you got to prepare for it. Like
100%.
Even Ned Brockman, when he obviously ran across Australia, starting to get to know Ned really well now, and he talks around every time he does a big race now, he's got a big race coming up in Sydney, and he's prepping for the come down because he knows like when your adrenaline is just firing for 3 days, Ned's going to be like 10, 11 days or something. So you need to prep for that because otherwise it's going to be fucking dark, man. You know what I mean?
It is. Like you just got everything going right. And especially when you have a bad weekend, like you still have that pump up, and then you come down and you're thinking about, man, I didn't do a good enough job. But that's like, you get to the end of the year and everyone's like, oh, what you can do? I'm like, I want to take a week off of like absolutely nothing. But then the same thing, you get a week off and like, man, I want to get going again. Like, you're like, oh, I'd love to have a week off right now. And then you're like, far out. When can we get going again?
Yeah. The adrenaline one's an interesting one because when I was playing footy, I was like aggressive player. Like that was just my bread and butter. But off the field would love love riding motorbikes as well. I got my skydiving license when I was playing footy, which was like probably so broke. I remember like I was at the Gold Coast Titans. We were in between coaches. I think it was 2020 or 2021. One of our head coaches just got the sack, so we had a new coach coming in, and there was probably like 3 months where we didn't really have a main coach. So I was just like, always wanted to get my skydiving license. So I was like, I'll just go and get it. So I went and got it. Did like 30 or something, 40 jumps, and then our coach came in and just like, the fuck, like, what are you doing, man? Like you swear, but I loved it. Like I loved it. I had that full, like, just that adrenaline rush of like jumping out of planes, going fast, cliff jumping. That was the whole thing. And I think that was like kind of part of the makeup. I remember the chairman of the Titans at the time, Dennis Watt. We have a good relationship now. We were talking about it not too long ago. So man, I remember when that piece of paper came across my desk, and I was actually applying for an education grant because in footy we'd get tertiary education allowance, and I was like, oh, I want to be a skydiving instructor one day. So put the skydiving course through as a tertiary education allowance, and when it came across his desk, he's like, this kid is taking the piss. No, they approved it.
Oh, did they?
They approved it. Yeah, it had like a $6,000 like parachute. Like
awesome.
Yeah, it was real rogue at the time. Gave it up after having like a few near misses skydiving. But that was the thing. Like I was doing it, got like super almost addicted to that feeling. But then I swear, like over time, kind of got to the stage where I was just like, oh well, like if footy's a priority, like everything outside of this, like it's not. Yeah. It's not meant to be, or it's not what you're supposed to be doing. Like I imagine if you want to be like a great racer, like you said before, your whole life is racing. Yeah. Like you froth racing.
Yeah.
Right? So you priorities. Yeah.
For sure. It's something that I suppose I do miss because of the risk outside of sport. Like I miss riding my motorbike, you know, and doing stuff like that and things that anything that could possibly injure me pretty much I don't do because I'm worried about affecting what my big focus is. And I think you see a lot of people, the longer they get on, the probably more relaxed they get about doing some things outside of their sport. But yeah, I certainly miss doing a couple of things like that and just having that rush more often. Like, as I said, we only do 12 races a year. When I was racing go-karts, we were racing like probably like 40 something weekends a year, like every weekend, and you're just doing it probably 3 times a week to now where it's just, it feels like it's a slow pace at the moment. Yeah. So it's, I suppose that it does change, but even the adrenaline rush now it's just like my adrenaline rush is winning. Yeah. Like, for me, like, I feel like I get super excited. Like I'm a pretty passionate person. I feel like when I have a bad one, I get like my team probably know, I get pretty upset about it. But then obviously when I have a good one, I express my emotions pretty high. So I feel like for me, obviously I absolutely love driving the cars and everything, but winning is just, there's no better feeling.
People, and I can only relate it to footy, but I see a lot of guys who are like really just like head into footy and it almost like consumes their whole life. Probably why they're so great. Do you find you need a balance outside of racing? Is there something outside of racing that you enjoy doing, or is it just like you're just so head into it at the moment?
See, I've sort of been thinking about this like the past 12 months, like, but I think you just got to do what works for you. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've got from it. Like some people are just 100% into racing, for example, but then a lot of people have a massive balance and both work. But I think for me, it's just about finding what works for you and doing what's best. For me, I'm pretty much all in racing at the moment. Like I don't have too much going on outside, and I've been trying to find that little break. Like just, you know, you have a bad weekend, you talk to a couple of people and they're like, you probably need something to distract you from when you do come back and you've had a bad weekend. You need to get your mind off it and get that. But like, as I said, I got my racing simulator at home, which is pretty cool. And I only built that about a couple of months ago. So I've been spending a lot of time on that, getting that going and stuff like that. But to be honest, when I'm home, I fly under the radar. Like I do my racing, I come back, chill at home for a couple of weeks, go again. So
mate, we need to get you the southern end of the Goldie. You'll be coming down here, going to the beach, rolling down for a coffee. That's a nice thing. Even a lot of the Bronx boys, like they live down here because when they're in Brizzy, they're dialed in. They're training. They'll spend most of their time at training, similar to you, right? And then they a lot of them move down to the Gold Coast, and they're like, this is great because like a lot of our mates, like they don't play footy. You know, we've got other guys doing, you know, business things and fashion labels and podcasts and sports, and like so everyone. We got like a little crew, which is great, but everyone does different things, which is actually a really cool way to it might not be like a passion, but it's cool to knock around with crew who are doing different things because it gets you out of that little bubble of professional sport. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like that's a thing that I appreciate most about my friends, even if they are in racing. When I'm with my mates, I'm with my mates. Like racing is not in the
You're
conversation.
not even talking about it. Yeah.
And I nearly struggle with some of my mates when we talk about racing because you're like one of my best mates. We're always massive competitors.
Yeah.
When we sort of went our own ways, we become best mates again.
Yeah.
But then you sort of talk about racing, get competitive, and that. So for me, like when I'm with my mates, like we hardly talk about it. We just joke around, take the piss and all that, but try not to sort of focus on racing and just try and really separate yourself from that.
What do you think about life after racing? Obviously, like you're so young. Like
Yeah.
You're 28, you're 21. Do you think about what you want to do post racing?
No. I don't exactly know, and hopefully I don't have to think about that for a long time. I think in this sport you can be around till your early 40s sort of thing. So hopefully I got plenty of time. I'd love to start my own business one day. Like that's always been something that I've been always pretty passionate about running a business, and even like I do all my socials and that and all my marketing and all of that stuff myself, and I quite enjoy doing that. Like I feel, I suppose now it's I wouldn't say a young person's game, but now with social media and that it's so big. So I got an interest in all that sort of stuff, but like I feel like maybe I need to get a few more years down the track and gain some more experiences and at the same time really focus on what I'm trying to do here, which is trying to be good at my main job. But I would love to get something going, start a little business and, have a couple of people coming around and working and stuff like that. So I'm not really sure what it's going to look like. But also like starting a young team or something like that. That's something I dream of helping some young kids in go-karts, having a team or something like that, just to sort of try and give back what I can.
The social media piece is an interesting one because when we first came into grade, a lot of the guys, like if you were to do anything outside of the little bubble of professional sport, the boys would be pretty quick to bring you back in, right? But now what I'm noticing is that boys, especially even the girls, like in the W space, AFLW and NRLW, they're leaning into their personal brands because they realize like how strong that can be. Like even talking to a lot of the Bronx guys, or even guys in Sydney who are doing really well with their socials, they've obviously got their own personal brand. They realize how important that is. Not only like in time to have some really great brand deals and push what messages you want to push, but also for like life after sport, they can see it. And it's like, it's really cool. It's really good, especially for the girls. Like the girls aren't getting paid as much cash to play. Like they're not full time yet. Well, some of them are, a lot of them aren't. And so they lean into that space so much more because they can see the benefit of it.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. And like for us to give you a quick rundown, like we're paid by the team to race the car and the team get all the sponsors on the car, which pay for everything pretty much. But then as drivers, we get our helmet. So we can actually on-sell our helmet.
Really?
So we're allowed a certain amount of sponsors on our helmet. So if you see a driver's helmet, I should have brought one actually down. But I got 6 or 7 sponsors. So I'm sponsored by like Red Bull, Super Cheap Auto, Vodafone, and then a couple of local companies. But you're able to on-sell that, which is a massive revenue, which is massive for you. Yeah. So a lot of guys actually probably make more off that than what they do on their driving contract. Really? So, but then to the social side, it's so big now. And I think you can see such a big gain in doing it and getting a big fan base and things like that. I do quite a bit of TikToks. Like I wouldn't say I'm big on TikTok, but like
Mate,
I'm not big on TikTok, but I like doing TikToks and that. Yeah. The amount of young kids that come up to me at a race weekend and go, "Oh my God, we love your TikToks." Like a few people take the piss. They're like, "Oh yeah, bloody hell, you're on TikTok." I'm like, mate, like I'm not doing dances or anything like that. I'm posting my race cars.
I haven't
and stuff
seen
like
the TikTok,
that.
but I just imagine you dancing
No,
and doing all the things.
I'm certainly not doing the full TikTok scene, but I love posting about it and doing stuff like that. And the young fans is incredible. Yeah. Like my teammate goes to me, he's like. How do you think you got all these young kids following you? I'm like, I genuinely think a lot of it's because of my socials and that, and like I'm joking around on there and trying to build a bit of a presence and stuff like that. I don't want to go too far, right? And doing like where I'm focusing on that more. I think a lot of people do that. They sort of focus more on the lifestyle than the actual doing the part.
Yeah.
Where I'm trying to find, I want to do my job, but I also want to promote what I'm doing and build my brand because it's not only beneficial for me, but for the sport, like trying to grow this sport into a real big thing in Australia.
But it's cool because you're taking people along for the journey.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
No one gets to see what it actually is like being like a professional supercar driver. You know what I mean? That's a cool thing and super niche.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So even like young guys who are coming up, they can look up like, oh, well, that's like Broc's doing that. Like that's what I want to do. Or like this is what an actual day looks like. Even when you're a young kid, you think, oh, racing supercars, like that would be such a glamorous sport, where it's like you've actually got to put in a heap of work. We had a rogue sport, bobsledding. Desi Johnson, who is she's incredible. She's such a lovely girl, but she was a track and field athlete, had a bunch of injuries. Some bobsledding team who they were Australian girls, but they were, I think, over in France or Italy or something like that. They're like, you're super powerful, super fast, like come over and just try bobsledding. And so she went over there. Now she's just like, she's like a professional bobsledder.
Yeah, that's
which
awesome.
it's a rogue thing. But what I was getting at is that she's like documented her pretty much whole journey to get there, but also her journey through injuries. And when we did a podcast together and when we were talking about it, she's like, it was actually really nice for like a lot of the younger girls who are coming up. They can resemble or respond to like how she was dealing with the injury. She's like, oh, well, fuck, like that's something that I'm going through.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it validates them and it makes it like, oh, this is normal.
Yeah.
Instead of like, I'm not alone throughout this time.
Yeah, I think in sports you hide a lot of stuff. Like, everything's sunshine and rainbows on Instagram. You know, like I think everything's like that these days. Everything looks perfect, but it's not always the case. But taking people on the journey, it's such a big thing in sports and just in general. Like it's the same with your sponsors and that. Like you just want to capture them on this. Go, okay, I'm here and I want to get to here and I want to take you on that path. And that's a cool thing now. I'm only 3 years into supercars, but like seeing people at a racetrack like every year and they're the same people and they're growing up and they've got your new merch. Like that it's such a cool feeling. And even around the track when you meet young kids, like that was literally me 10 years ago. Like I've got a photo of me at the Gold Coast 500. I think it would have been 2013 in a Red Bull shirt in front of now the car that I'm driving. Like
that's so sick.
It's so cool. I was trying to find it for ages and someone sent it to me last year and it's so cool for me to think like I was literally the kid running around. I remember seeing a driver and going like, oh, like trying to talk to him and stuff like that. And now I'm that guy. It's hard, but you have to remember that. And that's why you try and take the time to speak, especially to the younger kids, like always try and make time for them when you're at the track but you know, just trying to give everyone the time of day because that was you once.
That's got to be a pinch me moment. Yeah. I imagine, especially like I'm sure there's going to be some kid that gets a photo with you in front of a Red Bull, and then he's going to be the kid that's maybe might even replacing you when you're like literally finishing up. You know that's a reality.
Oh, 100%. Like that's happened to me. Like there's plenty of photos that I've got with guys that I'm now racing with or partnered with and stuff like that. But yeah, for me to have a Red Bull shirt staying in front of the car that I now or replaced, you know. That's so cool and it just makes you appreciate what you do. You forget it, you know. Like I went to the Titans game a couple of months ago and you walk out on the field, I'm like, oh my God, how cool is this? For me, when I get to the racetrack, it's just normal now. You know, you do forget that, but for so many fans and people there, it's like the coolest experience ever. So, you don't want to get comfortable, but you start to, you probably don't appreciate it as much as you need to. Like we're doing such a cool thing. We're living on the Gold Coast. Like life's pretty good.
Even like being a part of a Red Bull team, like, because obviously I don't know too much about the racing side of it, but looking at something like a brand like Red Bull, so cool.
Oh,
such a sick brand. And I know you've got some incredible brands on with you, but like that's got to be such a cool thing.
Yeah. I think any athlete, like you go sponsors like Red Bull, you know, and obviously a lot of Nike as well. Like that, they're sort of the two elite ones that but for me and motorsport, like Red Bull is by far the biggest brand in motorsport and to be honest, in sport in general. The opportunities that come with it and the people that I've met is just like incredible. Like I went to Austria at the end of 2022. They took me over. They've got an athlete performance center over there and it's where the HQ is and they've just got a big gym facility that you can train at and learn at. I'm just sitting at lunch like this with I'm just chatting to this guy and he's like 8-time world champion in kite surfing and a skiing world champion and a runner and I'm just like like, what am I doing here? You know, I'm just like, I'm just a guy that races cars from Australia, and I'm like here mingling with all these people. But it's just such a cool brand to be a part of that opens so many opportunities.
It's cool, mate. It's super cool, and I love the whole marketing play where it's like it's outdoor, it's lifestyle. Like even you look at their Instagram, and you sometimes can almost forget that it's an energy drink.
Yeah,
you know, it's an actual product, but their whole brand behind it is so impressive, and it's cool. I was talking to some of the crew in Red Bull, and it's like Red Bull, like I've started having Red Bull as like a pre-workout, like before training, you know, like even like before going into a gym session. We did an Active Games here. Active's like a gym, local gym. Ali Day, he's like a professional Ironman in Australia, one of the great dudes. Him and Anthony Bartolo, they've got Active, and they do like this kind of like, it's like a high Roxy type workout. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, so I was feeling like a little bit flat, like a little bit tired. And it was like in the morning, maybe 8 in the morning. Had a Red Bull 30 minutes before we went in. Me and our partner, we won it. We won. We won the Burley one. We didn't win the Australia wide one, but it was like you forget that it's an actual like performance energy drink. Yeah. Which is cool. So mate, it's a cool brand to be a part of, man.
Yeah.
Like, very exciting.
I drink it before I get in the race car. You know, like I drink it on a race weekend. I'll have 2 a day, like 2, maybe 3 a day. Like I normally have one before a session. So like if we qualify at 10:30, 11, like you wake up, you do a few things, you're going to have that little plateau, and I'll have a Red Bull before I jump in, and not like 2 seconds before, but I'll have one 15 minutes before I get in the car and that. But yeah, no, they're awesome. And like obviously coming in young and getting aligned with this brand is just, it's been unreal.
You talked about how your dad does a lot of your like racing contracts.
Yeah.
You also talked around like the helmet, how you get to do that. Do you have much of a say or much of a dealing with like who you want to bring on sponsors, right? Or is that something that your dad looks after?
No, I to be honest, I probably look after a lot of that side of stuff. Like I probably just don't like talking to my boss about how much money you're going to get paid. You know, I leave that to dad. Like obviously we have the chat and I'm obviously informed and sometimes sit on the meeting, but I let him go and deal with that. But a lot of the personal stuff I sort of deal with. But my dad's got such a good relationship with all of them. So when I go to a race weekend, a lot of my sponsors go to the corporates and that, and I maybe see him once or twice a day and, hey, quick g'day, you all good? Like I got to run. My mum and dad always go there, and they pretty much look after him for the weekend. Yeah. So, but yeah, I try and deal with them a lot. Like I feel like I got a pretty good connection with all my partners, and I want people that enjoy working with me, and I enjoy working with them. So it's been awesome, like to work with big brands and big companies. They expect different things from your local companies that are doing really well here on the Gold Coast as well. So it's awesome to have the big range. Like I just enjoy working with different people and that sort of stuff. But it's a big part of our game. Like probably 95% of the job is doing everything outside of the racing side, looking after sponsors, looking after the team and that.
It's cool, mate. It's a almost exciting space to be in. Like when I was playing, say like I would just let my manager deal with my playing contracts and third party sponsors. But now since leaving the game and doing this podcast, like this is a really cool way to start figuring out the sponsorship side of it. And you talked about how you really like the social media side of it, the TikTok, and incorporating them organically and using things that you genuinely like to use. Like 100%. Like you talk, the way you talk about Red Bull is just like, I use the product. Like this is something that I enjoy being with. Like, and even now with the podcast, like this is a passion project. Like this isn't a full-time job. This is something that I like to do for fun. So for me, it was just like, well, a commercial side of it wasn't, it's not a priority for down the track. While I would like to, I understand how hard podcasting is. So I was like, well, I'll do that down the track. And obviously we're here to break down the stigmas of mental health. And that's a variety of different conversations. But I was like, okay, well, anyone who does come on the podcast as like a partnership point of view, this is going to be someone who aligns with our values and what we want to do. So like when we have conversations with, Whoop, who's a recovery tracker, like recovery is a huge part of mental health. Movember, like these really like P3 Recovery, who's a recovery center here on the Gold Coast. Like these are people who are not only great people, but these are things that I fucking use like all the time. And so the way I look forward in the sponsorship space where it's like, well, if they're not going to align with our values or align with what we like to do, probably not going to do it. Like mental health podcasts, probably not going to have like a betting company and like potentially alcohol companies. 100%. You know what I mean? Like, cause it's what we do.
Yeah. I'm the same. Like I just you know, I get a certain amount of sponsors that I can have a year. I can feel that. I can't. Like I just want people that I really want to work with, and I want that feeling back. You know, I want people that are excited to work with me and they can actually help me. You know, I've got some real good partners around here, Lacquers, traffic management, Marshall Heights Safety, and all those guys they're just good people to be around, and I really enjoy them going to the races and them having a good time, and I'm getting like just good moral value out of, you know, having those guys around and all that sort of stuff. So it's awesome working with that. And I love having the corporates. You know, I got 3 big corporates, and then sort of 3, they're not local companies, they're national companies, but, you know, people that would sit down, we can go to the bar with. It's a one-on-one. It's not a team of 30 or 500 people sort of thing, which has been awesome.
Mate, what are you looking forward to? What's coming up? There's obviously, like, mate, we've been through the whole thing today, but what are the big things this year that you're looking forward to? Yeah,
so we're pretty much halfway to the year. So we got the rest of our year is awesome. Like, we got some really good events. So we go to Tasmania in 3 weeks, but then we got the Sandown 500, which is a 2-driver event, and then we got the Bathurst 1000. So for us, that's the Melbourne Cup. That's the grand final. That's the biggest race. Last year, I was in second and in with a shot of winning with about 25 laps to go, and my gear lever broke. And that was like super hard, because that's like the biggest moment of your career. You're in with a shot of winning it, and my gear lever broke with not long to go. So for me, like, I'm so excited for that race. Like, I just want redemption so bad there. I won there at the start of the year. We had a race there at the start of the year, and then Gold Coast 500 in Adelaide at the end of the year. So many amazing events. I'm really, we'll have to get you to the GC.
Brother,
come and check it out.
I can't wait. We'll line it up.
Yeah. So heaps of fun stuff. Like, Gold Coast is a good one. Just to have obviously a lot of family and friends that don't get to normally go to the races and that sort of stuff. Just to come and check me out, like doing my normal thing, which is awesome.
Mate, I'm sure is that a thing? Like, when people come, when you race on the Goldie, like, everyone wants to come watch?
Yeah, man, I get hit up for so many tickets.
I've only got a certain amount of allocations.
And just to clarify, I get like 2, sometimes maybe 4 tickets a weekend, and everyone's like, oh yeah, can I get tickets? Can I get corporate tickets? I'm like, mate, I still pay for corporate tickets. Like,
You got to pay your way, man.
I'm like, my family get my tickets, and I'm like, you know, sometimes I'll fish some out for a couple of my good mates and that sort of stuff. But it's funny, like, in the next month or so, I'll start getting, Gold Coast is coming up. Yeah.
Man, I've loved this conversation, Broc, man. This has been so sick. It's been cool to get to know you, and then also, like, your journey. Before we do wrap things up, is there anything that you think we missed, or anything that you'd like to cover before we wap it up?
I think it's been pretty good. Like you mentioned about the recovery before, I've just started doing that this year, going to I go to rigs over at Benoa. I've loved that. Like, you talk about a Red Bull feeling, or the adrenaline, like that. I love the feeling of going there and doing the pulls and all that sort of stuff, which has been.
You're doing the ice and hot?
Yeah. It's been really good. I really enjoy that after trainings, like the feeling you get from it, and so refreshed and all that. So I love it.
I reckon I took it for granted, because we would always do ice baths, like, after training, and we've been doing it forever since we were like 16. And now I don't know if it's like people starting to catch on. I don't know if it's like maybe it's the whole health industry now. Like, everyone's doing run clubs and shit like that. People are looking after their health a little bit more. But man, like, that feeling that you talk about, like, you just bounce back and forth. Like, we've got a sauna out front here. Like, we're going to P3 recovery, and I'm like, man, afterwards I walk out, I'm like, I feel so clear.
That's amazing.
Like, I feel like I got no stresses at the moment.
You can't really explain it to people, and it's so weird that I'm just jumping in a cold and a hot bath pretty much and doing it. But I do that after all my training sessions this year. But like, I get my mates to come on, like, just trust me. Like, I hate the ice bath, but like, I've gotten a routine of doing it and enjoying it. But hey, it's been really good. I'm really enjoying that.
Frothing, man. Broc, mate, thank you again. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been cool to get to know you, and mate, we'll get to the GC. I'll be the one hitting you up for tickets.
I'll find you one.
Thanks, brother. Cheers.